Welcome to Slammed, a Boston Celtics podcast where we cover the Celtics and the rest of the NBA at large. I'm Meghan Ottolini of WEEI, joined by Esteban Bustillos of GBH and Justin Turpin, also of WEEI and Odyssey. And we come to you from rainy, disgusting Boston, just talking about how my dog nearly dislocated my shoulder when she saw a cat yesterday. And I had to say the room, I'm podcasting from the auxiliary room in our apartment right now, and my dog was in here for about an hour, so it just reeks of wet dog fur. But we
Yeah,
will power through.
yeah.
And reeking of wet dog fur is kind of like the performance that the Celtics put on in the fourth quarter the other night against the Cavs. I'm sure there's been like 100 podcasts that detail what exactly went wrong in this loss. So I don't want to get super granular with we will get into the crunch time issues, but overall, does this demonstrate this kind of loss for the Celtics demonstrate to you guys kind of balancing of the law of averages or a reminder that there's some symptoms of something that could really be wrong with this team as we look ahead to the playoffs?
Yeah, I lean more towards the law of averages. Although it is, I guess, like this is the way where this team loses, right? I think 0 for 8 from the three in the fourth. Jalen Brown's comments, and we'll get to those later of just essentially them letting their foot off the gas. Um, so I think it is law of averages. Like you're going to lose, but to lose in this fashion where you had the 22-point lead in the fourth. I think it's a mix of both where it would be one thing if it was a close game throughout and you lose like that can happen any night, but to have this dominant of a lead and just let it slip through your fingers, yeah, it's like you shouldn't let that happen.
Yeah, I think it is kind of a mixture of both because that's why those win streaks are so long, right? Like they're so rare, those 11-game win streaks. You don't see them very often because they're so difficult to sustain. So I think it is part of the law of averages, but it highlights a bigger problem with the team where we've seen this, like majority of their losses, they're not getting blown out, which is encouraging, but down the stretch, I mean, they're just not getting it done. So it kind of feels like this is highlighting that in a team that doesn't have many issues, it's highlighting one that is kind of looking like a real problem.
So this was a really frustrating loss to me. And I know, okay, we're looking at a team that's 48 and 13. So people might get frustrated listening to us complain about one of 13 losses, but that you lost this game when Donovan Mitchell's out. Mobley goes out during the game. So that's another key Cavs player. This is a good Cavs team when they're at full strength. But this reminded me of a loss that we talked about earlier in the season at the end of the calendar year when we talked about the loss to the Lakers when LeBron James and Anthony Davis weren't in. That's a worse loss than what this is in my book, but this is a bad loss. And I do want to play this little bit of sound from Kristaps Porzingis. He's talking to Abby Chin of NBC Sports Boston about this being a good loss. And I'll get your guys' thoughts on this, but I want to go off on a minute.
Good loss for us.
Why do you say that? Yeah.
No, because I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy for us. We do have a feeling that we're like pretty much like we're gonna win every game. We're invincible. We're gonna win this game, no matter what happens. We're like we got this. A little bit of that feeling is always there. It's maybe healthy, but it's also healthy to get a loss here and there to kind of like, all right, here we go. Let's recalibrate a little bit and have that like attention to detail again. So I think it's completely like fine, and I think it's necessary for us to keep building.
So I do think that there is a very rare circumstances in which there can be good losses. It's kind of like talking about moral victory Mondays when you're in the NFL. Okay, this is a team that's taking a step forward. This is a
Right.
team that's going up against a team that's much more talented than them. And so they're growing through this experience. That's for the Celtics from 2018, without Kyrie Irving in those playoffs. Those are good losses in those series. This is not that. This is you, as Jalen said, and we'll play the sound in a second, not having the gas in your tank and not having the right mentality, a mentality loss. And I think that that is a symptom of something with this Celtics team that we haven't seen a lot of this season, but we've seen a lot of in past seasons. And so it concerns me that this happened between 2 games, one being the Warriors, where they blow doors and, everybody's riding high off that. Okay, the baton has been passed, and that's a team that they have a lot of history with, to looking forward to tonight's matchup against Denver, the reigning champs, and who a lot of people are penciling in as a possible opponent for you in the finals. And so, to me, it's kind of beyond a trap game because of the opponent that you were facing with their the lack of health that they have on their side. I may be rambling here, but it's just very frustrating to me. This kind of loss is still happening from time to time with how stacked this roster is and the experience of not just the starting 5, but going down to the 6th and 7th on the roster.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if y'all saw a reporter asked Jason Tatum essentially the same question after the game. It was like, "Hey, is this a quote unquote a good loss?" And I may have to go back and rewatch the video. It kind of looked to me like he like sort of almost rolled his eyes a little bit, because no, I'm sort of of the camp that you never want to lose when you're an NBA guy. That's obvious. And to your point, Megan, at this point, I think this is a team that should be sort of done with the lesson part of their growth. Like they're here, they've gone through, they've done everything but win the finals, right? Like this should this part of their growth should, it feels like it should be behind them. I don't know, how do you feel about it, sir?
Yeah, I think like when you talk about the mindset, like Megan said, like that's been an emphasis all year from day one. They've been emphasizing playing with the right mindset. And for the most part, they've played 61 games. And you could really think of maybe 3 that they haven't had that right mindset. On the Cleveland game, and it was only for 9 minutes. It was only that final 9 minutes of the fourth quarter. And
Yeah,
the
but
Los
Turp,
Angeles
that's the
game.
point.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I had to stop you because the final 9 minutes is the game. Like, the
right.
final
No,
9
no,
minutes is the meltdown that you had in
100%.
game 4 against Philly last year. Like, that's the
100%.
game. If you have a meltdown at the end of the first quarter, people get frustrated, but they don't ultimately, you have time to make up for it. This is, like, about composure to me.
Right, and this team learned last year the hard way that you have to stay focused throughout the entirety of the game. They learned that the hard way in the postseason last year. But I think more so that they've played 61 games, and for the most part, they have been really good with their habits and their mindset. It's only happened like a handful of times where they've kind of lost that. And I think that does happen, which kind of goes back to the law of averages part. Like, I think it is impossible over an 82 game slate to stay focused the entire time. Like, naturally, there's going to be lapses. And I think that's only happened a handful of times with this team. And it doesn't mean it's not going to happen during the postseason. Like, I definitely think there's going to be times we're going to be sitting here during the postseason and say it happened because I think it's just part of the game.
Yeah, I guess what the other sort of games I'm thinking of throughout their season where
Maybe
it's like,
Charlotte.
oh, that Charlotte was the first one that came to mind. It's like that
Yeah.
just shouldn't have happened. And then I think this
Look,
game,
they got even some of these wins, they got very close with
right?
Detroit. They got very close with the Heat 3 weeks ago when the Heat were without Butler and Rozier went down in that game. Like, they do still tend to mess around and play with fire, which I just get frustrated because I really thought that we were past that with this team. And I do think it raises a real question where everything with this team goes well when they're blowing doors. Like, everything goes well. When it's going well, it couldn't look better. And I think we can all agree on, everybody would agree on that. But if you look at their close game stats, there's some end of game concerns with this team that are very real. And it goes beyond just the 9 minutes of, Tatum and Brown combining for 2 points in the fourth quarter, which to me is just fully unacceptable. You talk about a lapse, that's just Tatum went 1 for 9. Brown gets in with like 5 and change left, and he doesn't even get a shot up. That this is the point where you need some of these guys to take over. The only person who really impressed me in the final minutes in his composure in that game was Kristaps Porzingis. And so maybe that's why he's saying it's a good loss, because at the end of the game, he knew what he was supposed to be doing, where everybody else is, dancing like a ballerina out there. And I don't mean to be too harsh, but I think this is a real thing that they need to figure out because, again, I don't want to get into the ultra granular of okay, 4.6 seconds left. Did Missoula actually, signal for a timeout? And should he have done that sooner? And blah, 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 blah. He has his philosophies, and those are his philosophies. And like, respectfully, he's going to do what he's going to do. But when you look at the stats overall, I threw this in the doc of our show for you guys. Like Chris Forsberg has this, they're ranked 24th when it's plus or minus 1 point difference in the final 10 seconds of a game. Like we've seen that they have an issue with composure when it comes down to, hey, there's maybe 2 possessions, 3 possessions. How are we functioning with this against even a very distinctly inferior opponent? And you're making Dean Wade look like D Wade. To me, when you are so far and away the favorite to be back in the finals in the East, but also to win it all, these are, to me, this signals real issues that they need to figure out.
How many games does this apply to? This plus or minus 1 point in the final 10 seconds. I can't. Have there been many games this season where they're
So,
even in that
7.
position?
wh-
7. Okay.
and then there's other stats. I mean, you can go through all these different like clutch criteria of how the NBA defines it versus how people individually define it. Maybe it's a point of they haven't been in enough of these games and enough of these where it's coming down tightly to the wire and having to be situational. I would just hate for them to have to figure that out together again, in the first or second round of the playoffs.
And I apologize for my last question because it's right there in the stat. It says I didn't read. My bad.
No, you're good. I don't know, Terp, you're quiet over there. Do you think I'm going too hard on them?
No, not necessarily. I mean, the reality is once the game gets close and it gets later, they are worse. They get worse as the game gets later. And that's a troubling trend. I mean, you mentioned that stat, like 5 points within the final 5 minutes. They're 18-9, 3 points, 11-9, 2 points, 8-8. It just continues to go down and down. So once the game gets closer, they get worse. And that's a troubling trend because, especially for a team that has championship aspirations, the end of the game is when you have to be at your best. Because the reality is, like right now, they're blowing teams out every night. They've led by double digits more than they've been trailing this season, which is just insane. But I don't think that's going to be reality come postseason. It's just simply not, because the competition naturally ramps up. So you're going to be put in these situations more. So I think this loss to Cleveland especially just highlights a serious problem that they need to figure out.
Well, I don't think we need to dwell on Cleveland forever because at the end of the day, it is one game and they had the
Yeah.
11-game win streak in front of it. I do just think that there's a couple things, interesting stats there to keep our eye on and situational stuff. But like we're recording this today. It's Thursday morning. This was like a difficult week to schedule because the Denver game tonight tips off at like 1 in the morning. Which I'm exaggerating, but it's 10 p.m.,
Yeah.
which Esteban, you wrote in our doc that we put together before the show should be illegal. I very much
Ew.
disagree. I mean, I should say I very much agree. I disagree with the 10 p.m. start time.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be a stupid question. Denver's mountain time, right? They have to be
Yes.
the definition of mountain time.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
assume
So
there's
So is
a
that
definition. Yeah.
that's
8
an 8
p.m.
p.m. start for them.
Yeah, I one time this is a few years ago, but I was in LA for like a conference thing. I think this was during the Celtics 2018 postseason run. And I remember I was like, "Oh my God, this is incredible. Like the games here start at 4. This is beautiful. I can go to bed at a normal time." Yeah, it is tough on the East Coast when you're following an East Coast team with these start times. I hate it.
And
Not a
there's
fan.
no way it starts at 10 either. It's a TNT game.
No.
There's absolutely no way it starts at 10. It's going to be closer to like 10:30, which is
Yeah,
obnoxious.
we gotta find a better way than this.
Even in the
I
weekday, like the difference between the 7:30 and the 7, that 30 minutes is huge. Like the
Yeah.
7
Oh,
o'clocks are
especially
great.
when you're there in person. I was
Oh
covering
yeah.
when I was covering the finals in 2022 out in San Francisco, all the local writers there were like, "You're gonna just wait until you get into these West Coast start times. Like, you're gonna love it." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm walking outside. It's like almost still
Mm.
light out. It's crazy. They got it nice out there for some things." What are you guys looking forward to taking away from the game tonight? Because for me, this is still a marquee game. I fully subscribe to one game can't demonstrate what a team will show you in a 7-game series or trying to win 4 games, however you wanna define the series. Um, I I still am intrigued to see where both these teams are at this point in the season when it looks like, for the most part, I know not exactly, but for the most part, Denver is starting to kind of ramp up and look towards who they're going to be in the playoffs, which I believe is going to be a little different than who they are in the regular season.
Yeah. Well, Justin, do we know yet if Brown is playing?
He's still questionable, so that'll
Yeah.
come out closer to game time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it's going to depend on that. They Nuggets just lost in overtime to the Suns earlier this week, who Boston plays next. Look, I think we said before, this does feel like this could be a finals preview. Obviously, that's a long way away. And I sort of brought this up before. This team, the Celtics team, has this weird track record this season with the Western Conference contenders, where the games are close, the games are weird. So if it follows that trend, I think we're gonna get another close, weird game, which is great. But I think those are games that they want to win, and whatever they say, I think there's no way you don't try to measure yourself up to that competition, especially when they're the defending champs.
Yeah, like you said, I think this is the closest thing you can get for a team like the Celtics that are head and shoulders above the rest of the NBA. This is the closest you get to a measuring stick game. Like these are the reigning champs, and I think it was Derek White when they lost to them earlier in the season. He said that they're the reigning champs, or Kristaps said it. That's who we're trying to be. And so this is the closest thing you're going to get to a measuring stick for the Celtics. So this is a big one, and especially coming off the loss where they've been so good responding off the loss. They haven't lost back-to-back games since the second week of the season. They are incredibly good at responding. Last time they had a bad loss against the Lakers, they ripped off 11 straight. Not saying that's going to happen again, but this is a real test. And it's, like I said, the closest thing you can get to a measuring stick that's for a team like the Celtics.
They've been fantastic at responding with back-to-back losses in terms of avoiding them, I should say, responding after a loss. They've been something great at trending that way all year. One more thing I want to check in before we do an incredible take flight that we have planned for you. And it's possible by the time this goes out that this is a different level of news, but I do want to touch on it with you guys because we have conflicting slightly reports out there right now. Shams Charania tweeted just about an hour and a half ago, said Justin, Minnesota Timberwolves All-Star Karl Anthony Towns has been diagnosed with torn meniscus in his left knee out indefinitely, which of course sounds catastrophic. Wage follows up, says that Timberwolves star Cat has suffered a left meniscus injury, but it remains unclear about how much, if any, time he'll be required to miss. Says that he and his team are working to get a full understanding about the extent of that injury and whether it requires immediate attention. So obviously when I saw Sham's tweet, I was like, okay, I have this list of challengers out west that I'm taking seriously for the Celtics in the finals, and I unfortunately just crossed Minnesota off that list. Now with this Woj follow-up, I don't know exactly how to take that. If someone from Cat's camp came out and said, "Hey, it's not as dire as all that. We're going to get a second opinion," if it's something like that. But either way, I'm not optimistic about him being at full strength or that being the same
Yeah.
Minnesota team. It's all a roundabout way to ask you guys, how scary is Minnesota without Karl Anthony Towns or with a diminished Karl Anthony Towns?
Well, first I'll just say about the conflicting reports. I think the Woj thing definitely sounds like damage control. Somebody's like, no, this isn't as bad as like I don't know, like it seems to me that Shams in as long as we've been following him, when he puts something out there, it's pretty confirmable, more or less. So I don't necessarily have reason to doubt that. I mean, somebody here is wrong. Either way, I think the thing about Minnesota to me is that they're still like we were just talking about how the Celtics have done pretty much everything but win that championship. And the Timberwolves are just like they haven't been through enough. I would say that I'm just like I think that's like their experience is the one thing where I'm like that's the one thing I think can hold you back, especially when you get to the playoffs. So even with Cat, I don't know. I think just that lack of experience on the biggest stages is it is concerning to me. If Cat is truly out, then I don't see how they make it through a bloodbath of a Western Conference.
I'm with Esteban. That West is really tough. And I think like even the Thunder, I put above them. Obviously the Nuggets. I just think more experienced teams, not necessarily the Thunder, but like right now it's Denver's conference to lose because they are the reigning champs. They've been there. And that lack of experience, like Esteban says, from Minnesota does concern me. But there's no doubt like Cat makes them a better team. I was just looking at the numbers. He's a plus 340 this year. Without him on the floor, they're only a plus 66, which is a big difference. So it's a big loss, and I love a source off. By the way, I think they're wildly entertaining, and I love how people feed into it. Like if you go and look at the comments, it'll be like "Woj beat you, little bro" or something, and like they'll just be going back and forth, which I find hysterical. So this is great content for NBA Twitter.
Yeah,
I
and
feel like
apparently
it's been a while. It's been a while
Yeah.
since we had these two going at it.
Yeah,
and
it's
they,
fun.
and they like don't like each other now, even though like Woj was Sham's mentor. Yeah, it's very Shakespearean, as Shakespearean as NBA sourcing can get, I suppose.
You can make a lot of Shakespeare out of the NBA.
Yeah.
Speaking of, now that we've turned to the arts, let's do Take Flight. Normally, this is the portion of our podcast where we go around the NBA and we do some quick hits with the Celtics themselves. But because we have the Academy Awards on Sunday at an earlier time, maybe the Celtics Nuggets could take a little bit of a note from that. Did you guys know that
Amen.
the Oscars are moved up to 7 p.m. on Sunday Eastern time?
I didn't. That's a great idea. I love it.
I know. I like it too, especially on a Sunday. But
Yeah.
anyway, so what we are doing here is the first annual Slammed Academy Awards. So we're looking at basketball movies. We say this is the first annual, like unless they release 5 new basketball movies this year. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
have to do different. Maybe we'll do like a cinematography
Yeah.
category next year or something like that. But
Yeah.
either way, let's start with this one. So we're gonna start here with best acting in a motion picture by an NBA athlete. And Terp, I'm also curious, like coming from a different generation, how many of these you're familiar with. I don't want to like knock you. So I'm just expecting that you've seen all of these. And if not, you can chime in. So we have Ray Allen as, of course, Jesus Shuttlesworth, and he got game.
Yes, yes.
We have Shaq as Neon in Blue Chips. I talked to Kuzi about Blue Chips once, and Shaq's inability to to make a free throw on cue for the cameras. Good
God
story there.
bless.
Michael Jordan as himself in Space Jam, of course. Marcus Johnson as Raymond in White Man Can't. Let me restart that one. Marcus Johnson as Raymond in White Men Can't Jump, and Kevin Garnett in Untouched Gems. So I'll let you guys go first, and then I'll chime in with who I'm deciding on.
Yeah, so just a couple of just I get not ground rules, but the way I was thinking about this, obviously we all have different opinions. So we don't have to agree on this, just whichever one you think is the best. And I put down these lists, but of course this is not the extent of the nominees in any of the categories. If you want to add or think there's somebody who isn't here who deserves credit, that is of course welcome. So this is not the extent. And also I put Kevin Garnett. I don't know if he qualifies because is Untouched Gems a basketball movie?
It's more of like a gambling movie.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the same level of asking if Silver Linings Playbook is a football movie,
Ooh,
because
yeah.
it's
Good
a
call.
lot about the Eagles, but it's mostly about a family gambling on the Eagles. But that's all to say that I'll just tell you right now, I think my pick is KG. Like,
Mm,
Michael Jordan as himself in Space Jam. Space Jam is of my childhood. It means a lot to me,
yeah.
but it doesn't hold a candle to KG's intensity in Uncut Gems. Like, if KG doesn't work in that movie, that whole movie doesn't work.
Well, I think it's a situation like Kevin Garnett. Who knows if he was supposed to be there? Maybe he just stumbled on set and they just started rolling. That's just the type of person he is, and that's his portrayal in that movie. Listen, I really love Ray Allen as Jesus Shuttlesworth, but I'm gonna go with Marcus Johnson in White Men Can't Jump. He's only in the movie for one scene, but it's so good and it's so iconic where he gets mad at Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson, and he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go to my car, get my other gun. I'm gonna shoot everybody. It's such a funny scene, and he's so perfect in it. That's my vote for best actor, best NBA actor, which is a very short list. Like this list doesn't extend much further than this, by the way. It gets pretty grim.
One more did come to mind as Kyrie Irving as Uncle Drew.
Oh, come on.
That's gonna be the newest. That's
Turp.
gonna be the newest NBA. Hey, we were talking about the different generations. That's a newer NBA movie, so I like that one. At the time, he was with the Celtics, I believe, when that came out.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a soft spot there. That came out when I was in high school, but I go with Shaq and Blue Chips. I love that movie. Blue Chips is wildly entertaining, and I think Shaq is hilarious in it. So I go with Shaq and Blue Chips.
I think you could like sneak Kyrie in just based off if you go off the commercials, because commercials are really
The commercials are better.
I can't speak to the Uncle Drew movie, which seemed terrible.
I'm also wildly entertained by like the makeup, like how they did that. It was super entertaining. How they made him like look old, like it was cool.
Can I also add in? I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie Trainwreck that LeBron was in.
Oh yeah,
LeBron plays himself in this Amy Schumer movie
forgot about that.
Trainwreck, and he actually was really good in it. There's a whole scene about him, or there's multiple scenes about him being cheap and trying to like split checks with people and stuff at restaurants, like fast
the
food
restaurant scene with Bill
restaurants.
Hader. That's really good. It's really good.
He
But
was
also-
very good in it.
Yeah, also difficult to gauge because sort of like Uncut Gems, where like it involves a lot of basketball, not traditionally basketball movie per se.
Okay, let's move it along. So basketball players, we're talking about now fictional players, kind of fictional.
Yeah,
From a movie that you take with a first round pick. And here we have Michael Jordan, Space Jam, Clarence Withers, aka Coffee Black from Semi Pro, Billy Hoyle and Sidney Dean in White Men Can't Jump. So I guess you're getting that duo, and Monica Wright in Love and Basketball. I feel like it's a pretty clear cut answer here that you got to take Michael Jordan because he's Michael Jordan in any universe.
Hmm. I don't know because this is like, mind you, sort of like end of his career. Michael Jordan. I guess this is the second run with the Bulls. And he does stretch his arm out like all the way at the end. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's originally I was not gonna go. I may have gone Billy Hoyle and Sidney Dean. I think you had to draft them as a duo because they're essentially codependents throughout the movie. But I think you're right, Meg.
I don't think they're translating to the NBA though. You know, Venice Beach, they run it. I don't know if it translates to the court.
I don't.
It has to be Michael Jordan. Yeah, it has to be Michael Jordan. Like Megan said, he's Michael Jordan in any universe, so you have to take Michael Jordan. So I think that's probably the easiest one on this list.
You know, I will say I think Coffee Black. That's a sneaky late round pick. Like he's gonna come in and do like some damage off the bench.
All right, let's look to the bench, as you said. Best movie basketball coach. Here we have Coach Carter, played by Samuel L. Jackson in Coach Carter. Pete Bell, played by Nick Nolte in Blue Chips. Don Haskins, played by Josh Lucas in Glory Road. And Norman Dale, played by Gene Hackman in Hoosiers. I think overall, like, I got to say, first of all, I think I saw Glory Road in high school, but I don't remember it. If I ever saw it, I only saw it once. And I guess I have to go with Samuel L. with Coach Carter because he had all the life lessons on top of the basketball lessons, as much as Gene was reaching those rednecks, those Indiana Hicks and Hoosiers. I don't think it really compared to the challenges in LA that Coach Carter had to deal with his team.
Yeah.
I think Coach Carter stuck to his guns a little more. You know, at one point, Gene Hackman's like, it's more important to me right now to leverage my assistant coach's confidence than to coach my team. So I'm getting thrown out of the game. Like, I don't think Coach Carter would do that. He just locks the gym.
Yeah. I think how often do you think Missoula watches Coach Carter? I think maybe he draws some inspiration from that. I will also say Coach Carter is the only one where the movie is named after the coach. I can't think of many movies where that's the case. But I will actually go. I guess this may be controversial. I'm gonna go with Nick Nolte. I think he's so good in Blue Chips. The monologue at the end both aged terribly and aged perfectly because he's basically describing what the NCAA has become, of just athletes looking just outright for cash in hand. Um, at the time sort of hidden, but now just true. And he's completely convincible as like this guy was a total maniac in the 90s as a college coach. So I'm going with Nick Nolte, the legend.
I'm going with Coach Carter. That is my favorite basketball movie. When we started talking about this, it was the first one I mentioned. It. I watched that all the time growing up. And you have to be a real badass to have the movie named after you.
Yeah.
Like it's literally called Coach Carter. You have to be a badass to have that. So I just think the storyline on that's great. Like the basketball content's great. That's my favorite basketball movie. So easy, Coach Carter.
Can I ask you real quick? Because I remember watching that movie as a kid, and like some of the stuff, and we're gonna get into this in this next category. Some of the stuff was like too risque for kids. So how old were you when you started watching Coach Carter?
I was in like middle school. So some of it like kind of went over my head, to be honest. And then I rewatched it like not too long ago. And then I kind of got to understand it a little bit more. But yeah, no, growing up, I loved that movie. I just thought the story was cool. And at the time, everyone's like, oh, yeah, like I want to play high school basketball or whatever. So you had to take inspiration from it. So it was good.
Yeah.
Let's move on to best life lesson offered by the game of basketball. So here are your options. From Hoosiers, always pass at least 4 times before shooting. From He Got Game, don't trust anyone, not even your own family. From Coach Carter, our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure, and teen drinking is very bad. And then from Love and Basketball, don't gamble your romantic life on a basketball game. I'll turn to you guys first.
I think it's Love and Basketball because I rewatched that scene again, and it's such a preposterous idea. It's such a bad idea. Like, don't put your whole future on the line, and especially with Omar Epps, Quincy. It's like, dude, you're supposed to get married. Like, and the next day, what do you? This is a terrible idea. Don't do this. Don't play for your heart with basketball online, especially if you have like a Celtics fourth quarter the last couple of nights where you go 0 for 8 from 3. You could ruin your whole life. Don't do it.
Honestly, I haven't seen Hoosiers, but I love the advice. Always pass 4 times before shooting. Like, if you haven't caught on yet, I'm a big ball movement guy, so I love the advice. So I'm going to go with that one because that's how I like to see the game of basketball played. But I've never actually seen that movie. So just because of that line, I'm going to go back and watch it.
So I would say that's more like a rule from Hoosiers than a lesson. I feel like the biggest lesson from Hoosiers is that the game is the same. Your game is the same no matter where you take it. You know, the whole measuring the court, it's the
That's
same
good.
distance in the field house versus their field house at home. I
That's
would
good.
say, though, my biggest lesson actually comes from the movie Air Bud, which is
Oh, this is
a
incredible.
basketball movie we haven't discussed, and the overall lesson is just dogs are better than people, whether they're on your
Ooh,
basketball team or whether, it's a family member, dogs above all. I do like once in a while you see this, and I apologize because I don't have the author in front of me. You see a tweet that someone put out of like the dad who has shared custody and he's driving his kid home from the Saturday that he had the kid and the kid lost to the team with a dog on it.
yeah, I've seen that one. Has it ever been discussed like true like how Airbud could shoot the ball? Like it doesn't make like, doesn't he shoot it with his nose,
Yes,
which
like
would
a
hurt the
seal.
dog?
He
But that
boxed
would
it.
yeah, but like with a bat that would really hurt the dog. It doesn't the movie just doesn't add up.
Yeah, I mean, I also feel like there would be a real defensive advantage when the dog pees on the court because that's what dogs do. Like,
Anyway,
anyway,
shout out
moving
Airbud.
on. Shout out Airbud. Best basketball scene in a movie. Here we have Jake and Jesus Shuttlesworth play one-on-one with Jake's freedom on the line, and he got game. I always think about that one.
Yeah.
Quincy and Monica play for their relationship. We just talked about that in Love and Basketball. The invention of the alley-oop in semi-pro. I'm just going to say this next one is my winner. The opening scene on Venice Beach in White Men Can't Jump. That's just absolutely iconic to me. Like, whenever I think about hey, what could the NBA do that's kinda like the Field of Dreams game that the
Oh,
MLB does? I think they should go to Venice Beach and basically just recreate that.
that's a good idea. You could also do like I know there have been like talks about like Rucker Park in Harlem. Yeah, that's a really good idea. I I think I'm gonna go with Jake and Jesus Shuttlesworth, and he got game. That just especially because have you ever heard like the backstory of like what happened on sets of like Denzel was actually like playing and like actually got ahead, and Ray Allen like he's like that's not supposed to happen. This isn't in the script, and so like it got actually heated. And just like the complexities of this specific father son dynamic. Yeah, I loved it. I'm going with he got game.
I do love the opening scene of White Man Can't Jump, but I'm going to go with the invention of the alley-oop. I find that scene wicked
Incredible.
entertaining. It's an incredible scene. So I'm gonna go with that one.
I rewatched it I think yesterday. It's everybody's reaction is so perfect. Also Woody Harrelson getting his second appearance in our list. But his explanation was like why this there can't be a travel. The ref say foul. No, 2 fouls. It's wonderful. It's a perfect scene.
It's maybe not like one of the best of Will Ferrell's catalog, but there are scenes. It's more of a movie where it's like there are scenes and the
Yeah.
scenes can't add up to the whole story, but it's still worth it for the scenes.
I kind of
It's a
find
great
myself watching
YouTube
that.
movie.
Yes. Like I find myself watching that be like, what, like, where does this add up? Like it's just kind of all sliced together.
Yeah. You watch the clips on YouTube. It's like, oh, this is great. The whole of it is like, this is a little weird.
Okay, so let's go to our biggest category here. This is the best basketball movie. So we got He Got Game, White Men Can't Jump, Hoosiers, Coach Carter, Love and Basketball, or Other. So after going through and like picking this movie for nothing so far, I feel like kind of a fraud picking this, but I'm going to go with Hoosiers. Hoosiers is just, I think it's the first basketball movie that I saw growing up, and it probably doesn't really age well in terms of how modern it feels, but I do love Gene Hackman.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's just something extremely quaint about it. And I don't think you can remake it, but it feels predictable at this point and all. And again, I don't think has aged perfectly, but I guess it just has some nostalgia for me growing up with it.
Yeah, what they should do, they should remake it, but do it like they did with White Man Can't Jump, which the remake we did not that is not on this list. But just have Jack Harlow be one of the players in the Hoosiers remake. I will say I remember watching Hoosiers in high school. I did not care for it at all, to be like just honest, and which is I think a controversial basketball movie take. So maybe I need a rewatch, but I never enjoyed it. I'll say for me, my answer I think is He Got Game. It's the only one with like Denzel is so good, and especially like the scene where he's telling Jesus Shuttlesworth how he got his name, and it's like, oh, it's not actually after Jesus in the Bible, it's about Earl Monroe, and his like you can tell like he actually like loves basketball in describing this. And it's just like one of the most pure, I think, just acting scenes in a basketball movie. I love it. He Got Game. That's the one I'm going with.
I like how Megan mentioned the nostalgia because that's what I feel with Coach Carter. Like when I tell you I would come home and just throw that on Netflix, like that's literally what I would do. Just like when I was a kid, like coming home from like grade school, like whatever, just throw that on. And so I've got kind of connection. And like I said, like that's my favorite basketball movie ever. So this was an easy choice.
Well, this is I think that's it. Unless did you have any other nominees, Megan?
I don't think so. No, I'm just glad I got my Airbud mention in.
Wow, what a congratulations to all of the nominees. I'm sure this is the pinnacle of their acting and filmmaking careers. We'll be sure to send the statues in the mail.
We need more basketball movies is the point. I feel like sports movies overall, we've really been in a bit of a drought.
I will say thank you because I had another point that this whole thing was leading up to. From like the late 90s to 2000s, there was, I'm sure y'all remember this, there was this stretch where Disney was making really good sports movies, and they're like all kind of corny but also heartfelt.
Yeah,
Whether
like
that
Mighty
was
Ducks.
Yeah, but and also like the big ones. Remember the Titans,
Yeah.
Miracle, even stuff like The Rookie, or even more recently, like we mentioned Glory Road, but even more recently, like McFarlane USA. We need the Disney Bill Russell movie.
Yeah.
I know they just did a documentary on him on Netflix, but the story is like it's right there. I don't think anybody's ever done it in that sort of format. That's my pitch to Disney. Do the Bill Russell, the Bill Russell movie.
All right. Well, we will see what happens with the Academy Awards on Sunday. Not sure that will make the pod in terms of content, but I think we'll definitely revisit or whatever happens with this Denver game tonight, provided we all stay up for it or watch it tomorrow morning. Definitely a lot to look forward to with the Suns on the horizon too. See what I did there? Suns on the
Nice,
horizon.
nice.
A lot of
You're on
good
fire with
basketball
those
coming.
today.
Yes.
Great
Yes.
job.
Oh, with the sun again. Thank you for joining us. This has been Slammed, and we'll talk to you guys next week.